And looks like we're live. Thanks, everyone. We have our weekly stand-up right now for the AllReady project as part of the Humanitarian Toolbox. As we've talked about several times, we're marching along towards a December release to get to a V1, get this in the hands of folks, actually have it used out there in production and start learning from that. James, who normally runs these, I believe is on an airplane as we speak, trying to head back home. So I'm going to run this today. And I've got Dave and Justin with me here today. And we'll talk a little bit about state of the project, some events, a little bit of the struggles of date and time and space and time in Wales. And then we'll wrap it up. Jim with the Red Cross may be joining us in a moment. So we just had an event, which we'll talk about in a moment, but just pulled in at about another half dozen or so pull requests as of today. So a couple of interesting fun stats. We're up to 696 pull requests that have been closed and integrated into the project, and I think only 100 of them are Steve or so, and probably the next 100 is Mr. McCarthy, and then everybody else. So I want to thank everybody who's been a contributor. At this point, we have 80 folks who are named contributors in the GitHub repository. There's also probably a lot of folks who paired or helped mentored or worked with them, so definitely more than the 80, but want to thank them. And then lastly, we're 2,286 commits. So lots of activity, lots of work that's been going on in the project. We've got a release out there, so if you look at our issues, it's tagged the November release, and you'll see a milestone, the November milestone. You'll see a set of issues in there with priorities and stuff, so that's things you can focus on, as well as we keep having things tagged as jump in. So we do our best to have sort of smaller issues that are a little bit less work that you could jump in, sort of understand what's going on in the project and not have to change everything in there. So those are areas where you can attack the project. And in a moment, I'll go through some of the events we have coming up, but I'll hand it over to you to talk about some of the great stuff that happened this week. We saw lots of pull requests and all of that, and very excited to see a new group of folks contributing to the project.
So thank you. So this week we did a hackathon at our internal software conference at Intel. We had 16 folks participate, got 12 pull requests put in. We got 3 more that folks are working on right now. Many of those folks had never contributed to open source at all, so they had a great time with their first contributions, and they were all asking me when our next event is going to be. So that is a good sign.
Excellent. Yeah, as I quickly saw my email blow up with lots of issues being tagged, lots of pull requests coming in. We got a good number of folks added to our Slack channel for the project and all that. So great to see what happened that day, as well as hopefully people continue to contribute going forward as well. So thank you very much for setting that up. As well as I believe you kind of used a little bit of innovation. I think to you was old hand, but to us it's something new we've seen in a Codathon. You want to talk about that for a moment?
Absolutely. So when we did the Arizona Give Camp Hackathon back in August, one of the things I did for that one is I went through all the issues and pulled out the ones that looked like they were ready to either work on or fit what the major areas that we wanted to focus on were. And I put that one in a Google spreadsheet. And everyone got access to it, but it took a little bit to get everyone access to it. So this time I did the same thing for filtering through the list, but I printed out index cards essentially, and we did a Kanban board on the wall. And so folks could go pick whatever they wanted to work on. We stuck it in the in progress, put it in done, and they were finished. And we still followed the HTBox process of once you pick the card, go to the GitHub repo, put in that you're working on it just so somebody else doesn't happen to pick it up, and then put the pull request and you're done. And seemed to work really well. We got, in the first 3 hours, we had 4 pull requests that came in. And it was kind of funny that you mentioned your email blowing up, because I had to leave halfway through the hackathon to go teach a 3-hour tutorial, and my phone was blowing up as all those pull requests came in. And I didn't have a chance to look at it, and the other organizer came up and said, yeah, we got 8 more in the afternoon, which was awesome to see. So the Kanban board worked extremely well, and my goal this next week is to pull out a couple Intel libraries that aren't necessarily needed for the project. They were just part of our internal template, and so I can just open source that. The little web app I wrote was really easy. You stuck in either an Excel spreadsheet that had just a list of issue numbers, or you could do one by one, and it went off to GitHub and pulled in the title, the milestone, the labels, got the link to it, and just printed out a little nice 3 to a page index cards, and you just had to cut them out.
Excellent. That sounds great. And like I've mentioned to you on the side, I think this is a new best practice, and we're going to share that with the folks who'll be running some of the upcoming events. Speaking of which, before we turn it over to Dave, I'll talk about some of the events we have coming up. We've got one every month, at least one every month right now. So this month of November, on the 19th in Eindhoven, for .NET Zuid, we have the Hackathon for Humanitarian Toolbox. Richard Campbell will be there. In fact, I think it's either today or tomorrow he's getting on a plane heading that direction. And so on the 19th, there'll be a hackathon, again, at .NET Zuid in Eindhoven. And we'll provide a link to that, which I think we've already tweeted out and such. So that's going to be literally 1 week from now. In fact, I believe they're going to try to wrap it up right around the time we'll do our stand-up. So they'll be finishing there, and because hashtag time zones, which Dave will talk about in a moment, they'll actually be wrapping up the end of their day as we start ours and have a stand-up. So hopefully they'll be joining us next week. We look over to December. We have the first of our two London hackathons. This one is London, Ontario. And so we'll get out the link to this as well. But the folks there who I believe organized another one about a year or so ago, organizing a Humanitarian Toolbox hackathon on Saturday, December 10th. And there's a meetup link there. It's at Hacker Studios in London, Ontario. And so we look forward to that one in December. And then in January, the second London hackathon, there'll be a Humanitarian Toolbox workshop. And it is January 16th and the 17th at NDC London in the Excel Center. Both Richard Campbell and Bill Wagner of Humanitarian Toolbox will be there, as well as I believe Steve Gordon, who's one of our most prolific and awesome contributors, who's based out of the UK, will be there as well. So an event in November, event in December, and one in January. So we've definitely got a lot of activity as well as online stuff. Before we wrap up the stand-up, I'll throw it over to you, Mr. Burkett, to talk about the big work that's been happening with date and time. I think I'm about to hit the button to merge that pull request in while you're talking, and then there's probably some unit tests and some other stuff to follow that.
Yep. Oh, excuse me. I have a bit of a cough. So, yeah, I just wrapped up at least the initial phase of getting time zones linked not only to campaigns but also to events, and having that properly flow down into the tasks that make up the events, and having this whole offsetting of the date time that gets stored handled a little bit more automatically now, so that it's that was always a big source of confusion for us on the project. So it's in a lot better shape now. I ran into a few other bugs that we didn't know were there as I was going through that process. So fixed a few things there. As you said, we have some unit tests to add still. So I'll be adding some GitHub issues for that today, and a bit more cleanup. The next big thing for me on the date time issue, which I guess I have a hard deadline for before next weekend, is the formatting of date time. So everything seems to work pretty good most of the time. We have our server kind of set to, we only really support English US right now, at least as our first version. But there's something funny going on that even though we have all the date time formats set to specifically English US, for some reason, there's something happening in JavaScript where it gets flipped over to the local formatting of the date time. So for folks who are in, say, the UK, the month and date end up getting flipped around on the date time editor. So it's purely a JavaScript side issue. Everything's working the way we expect it to on the client, on the server, and the way things are being parsed. It's and sent to the client. It's just that value at some point is getting flipped around on the client. So that's kind of my next big thing to get fixed. And then, of course, documenting all this so that it makes sense for everyone.
Excellent. I know this has been a work in progress for quite a while. So thanks for that. I actually just hit the button to merge it while you're talking. So the code is in and building, which actually pushed us up to 2,295 commits now. So we're almost at 2,300. Additionally, as he mentioned, he's going to be creating issues for unit tests, which a lot of those will help with jump in, the JavaScript issue. And then you and Mike have been working, and I forget what the issue number is here. It's somewhere in there. But there's an issue out there to now that these changes are there, work across some of the other models and some of the other areas to propagate the changes with request, itinerary request, looks like a few other things. Make sure that they're all storing them as date time offsets and stuff.
Yeah, I'll try to connect with Mike on that over the next few days.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so that was a big change and something we definitely wanted to get in there before our release, so very glad to see that. As we mentioned at the top, just as a reminder before we wrap, running the project against a December milestone. We've got a number of things that we're trying to get done. You can find priority issues by looking at our milestones off of the issues list. And for example, on the November milestone here, we've got about 35 open issues, and a good number of those are tagged as jumping and stuff. So if you're looking to contribute to the project, tag one of those. You got a question, ask it, and we're all really good about hopping on and answering questions whenever you got them. So unless there's anything else, I think that's a wrap for today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you later.